Welcome back to Binge Guy, the next show. I'm Andrew.
And Victoria.
And we are diving deep today into The Last Supper. This film is hitting theaters on March 14th, so...
Very soon.
Yeah, very soon. And we have a whole bunch of sources for you. Articles and interviews, even the trailer. All to help you figure out if this is one you want to add to your watch list.
Well, it looks like it has all the makings of a really good film, you know? A timeless story, great cast, and the director is known for some really stunning visuals.
Okay, so I want to start with the trailer.
Yeah.
My initial impressions were, it looks like we're going to be getting a glimpse into Jesus's final days.
Right.
But I think what's really interesting is that the focus seems to be on ambition and betrayal, which...
Yeah.
Those are themes that are still relevant today.
Definitely. And what really stood out to me is that this isn't going to be your typical retelling of the story.
Right.
They're going to dive into it through the eyes of Peter and Judas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we get those unique perspectives.
That's a really interesting angle. I mean, how do you think their interpretations might differ from the traditional narrative? I mean, you think about Judas the betrayer, but what led him to that point? And Peter, even though he was so devoted, he denied Jesus 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of internal struggles do you think the film will reveal?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. And that's where the real impact could be, right?
Yeah.
Exploring those human flaws, the complexities. We often put these biblical figures on a pedestal.
Right.
But this film seems to be humanizing them, allowing us to connect with their struggles.
For sure. Speaking of humanizing, did you know that Chris Tomlin is involved in the production?
Yes. Chris Tomlin, the Christian music artist.
Yeah.
That's right.
He's actually an executive producer, and he wrote the end credits song, No Greater Love. What do you think about how his musical style, which often evokes, hope and inspiration, how do you think that might influence the overall tone of the film?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, his music does have that very uplifting feel, so... Yeah, I'm really interested to see how that plays into the film's overall message. But there's actually even more to it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they actually approached him about writing a song specifically for the movie.
Oh, wow.
And he watched an early screening, and guess what?
What?
He realized a song he had already written, inspired by John 15, perfectly captured the film's message.
Whoa, talk about a God wink moment.
I know, right? It's like fate connecting his music to this film.
Yeah.
This makes me think about the film's potential to reach a broader audience, even those who maybe aren't familiar with the Bible.
Yeah, absolutely. The tagline is, all are welcome at the table. So it seems like they're definitely aiming for a wider appeal. This isn't just a film for the faithful. This is about ambition, betrayal, redemption. Those are themes that can resonate with everyone. And the producers, they've really emphasized the film's commitment to biblical accuracy. They even consulted with theologians to make sure that the script stays true to the source material.
That's so important, I mean, of course we expect some artistic license in adaptations.
Yeah.
But that commitment to accuracy could be a big draw for viewers.
Yeah. Especially for those who hold the Bible as sacred text. That authenticity adds a really significant layer to the film. And even for those who are just approaching the story from a historical or cultural perspective, I think that faithfulness could make it more compelling.
It really feels like they're inviting viewers to engage with the story on multiple levels.
Oh, right. You have the personal, the spiritual, the historical.
Exactly.
And another thing I thought was interesting was Grand Canyon University's involvement with the film.
Oh, yeah, Grand Canyon University. That's interesting.
What do you think about how their mission of service aligns with the themes of the film, sacrifice and redemption?
Well, their president actually talked about how their commitment to service reflects the message of the film.
Oh, okay.
It's not just about passively watching.
Right.
It's about being inspired to live out those values of compassion and empathy.
For sure. And, let's move on to some of the production details. Did you know that they filmed this whole movie in Morocco?
The whole thing.
The whole thing. Can you imagine the visuals, the desert landscapes, the architecture? It's like stepping back in time.
Oh, yeah. And the director, Mauro Borrelli, is known for his visually striking style using light and shadow. It's going to be amazing.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The cast includes Robert Knepper from Prison Break and James Faulkner, who has been in a lot of historical roles. I mean, with these actors and Borrelli's direction, I think we can expect a really immersive experience.
So just to kind of recap what we've talked about, we have a film that's approaching the story of The Last Supper from some unique perspectives.
Yeah.
It's staying true to the source material, and it has impressive visuals and a great cast.
And don't forget the God wink with Chris Tomlin.
Right, how could we?
So I'm curious, what stands out to you the most so far? What are your initial thoughts?
Honestly, I'm most intrigued by the portrayal of Judas. He's always demonized, but I want to see how they explore his motivations, his struggles, what led him to betray Jesus. Was it just greed, or was there something more to it?
That's a great question. And it's something we're going to dive into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore the themes of ambition and betrayal in more detail and discuss how this film, The Last Supper, might challenge our understanding of those very human struggles.
Welcome back to Binge Guide, the next show. We're continuing our deep dive into The Last Supper, and it's time to really get into these themes of ambition and betrayal.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about ambition in this context, because we often associate ambition with worldly success. But for the disciples, their ambition was really intertwined with their faith. They believed Jesus was the Messiah, and their hopes were really pinned on that.
Right, and that's where it gets tricky, right? Because their expectations didn't really line up with what Jesus was teaching. Even the trailer hints at that conflict. There's a line, "This Jesus is blinded by ambition." And then we see Judas actually challenging Jesus, questioning his path.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder if his betrayal was fueled by more than just greed,
Maybe like a sense of disillusionment.
Yeah.
Maybe he felt let down when Jesus didn't turn out to be that powerful, conquering Messiah.
Exactly. It just adds another layer to his character. Makes the betrayal, not okay, but at least a little more understandable.
Right.
And let's not forget Peter. He was so devoted to Jesus, but he still denied him 3 times.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even the people closest to Jesus were still human. Yeah, they had their own fears and weaknesses.
Yeah, and that's what makes the story relatable, right? We all have those moments where we don't live up to our ideals, where fear gets the best of us.
The film seems to be exploring that human condition, the messiness of it all. And I think that's what's really interesting about it.
It's not shying away from those hard truths,
That's right.
but it's not all doom and gloom, The Last Supper is also about redemption. It's about how even when you face betrayal and suffering, there's still that glimmer of hope, that chance for forgiveness and renewal.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the producers talked about how committed they were to staying true to the biblical account. And that message of redemption is at the heart of it. The story doesn't end with the crucifixion, right? It goes beyond that to the resurrection and the promise of new life.
And speaking of new life, Chris Tomlin's song No Greater Love, which plays during the end credits, echoes that theme of redemption. It's based on John 15, which talks about laying down your life for your friends, that ultimate sacrifice, that willingness to forgive, even when you've been betrayed.
Oh, wow. I love that connection. It adds so much meaning to the film and, its exploration of forgiveness and second chances.
Speaking of forgiveness, I wonder how they're going to portray Peter and Judas grappling with their actions. Will we see them going through their own repentance and transformation?
That's a great question. It would be really powerful to see their internal struggles, how they come to terms with what they did. It's a big message that even when we mess up, there's a path back to grace.
Absolutely. And it's not just about their own personal journeys. The film could explore that broader message of forgiveness and healing. That's so important in the Christian faith.
It's a message I think we all need to hear. Especially in a world where there's so much division and so much negativity, It reminds us that even in the darkest times, there's still a possibility of finding meaning beyond our pain.
And it's really cool how Grand Canyon University is involved in this project. They're not just promoting a movie, they're really using it as a way to spread this message of service and compassion.
Yeah, their mission fits so well with the themes of the film. It's like they're encouraging us to take those ideas of redemption and grace and actually put them into practice in our lives.
Through acts of service, through forgiveness, through reaching out to people who are struggling. It reminds us that faith isn't just about what we believe, but how we live and how we treat others.
So The Last Supper could be more than just a movie. It could be a way to spark some positive change, for individuals and even for society.
That would be amazing. But before we go too far down that road, I think we need to talk about the movie itself, as a film. We've touched on the visuals and the director and the actors. What do you think about how all of those things will come together to tell the story?
Welcome back to Binge Guide, the next show. We are wrapping up our deep dives into The Last Supper. And I want to talk about how all these pieces that we've been discussing, the story, the visuals, the actors, how all of it's going to come together to really create that immersive experience.
Yeah, and we were just talking about those amazing visuals that we can probably expect from Morocco and Mauro Borrelli's style as a director, I'm picturing these vast desert landscapes and then these close-up intimate moments during the Last Supper. I think it's going to be so visually appealing.
Yeah, I think so too. And then you add in actors like Robert Knepper and James Faulkner. I mean, I have high expectations for some really great performances. They're both so good at conveying deep emotions, They can really draw the audience in.
Totally. And beyond just like the technical parts of the film, I'm really curious about the conversations that it might spark. We talked about ambition and betrayal and redemption, but I think there's this whole other layer here too, about faith and doubt.
Right. It seems like the film is exploring faith in all its complexity, showing how even those closest to Jesus struggled with their own uncertainty and fear.
Exactly. It's a good reminder that faith isn't always easy. It's not always a straight line. It's more of a journey with ups and downs. And I think by showing those struggles honestly, it might actually make the story resonate with even more people.
Yeah, especially with those who maybe haven't always connected with traditional religious stories. This could be really powerful for them. It's kind of like the film is saying, it's okay to question things. You don't have to have all the answers.
Yeah, and that message of inclusivity really goes back to the tagline, all are welcome at the table, right? It's not just about who was actually there at the Last Supper. It's about who's invited to hear the story and think about what it means and find their own meaning in it.
Yeah. And what about Chris Tomlin's music? His style is so hopeful and uplifting. I'm curious to see how his song, No Greater Love, really complements the film's message. And that God-wink moment adds a whole other layer of meaning, like there's this deeper connection between the music and the film.
For sure. It feels like all these pieces are coming together to make something special. But the big question is, will The Last Supper really live up to the hype? Will it offer something new to this story? Will it be a film that stays with you?
Well, we've gone through the trailers and interviews and behind-the-scenes stuff. We've talked about the themes and the impact and all the cinematic elements. So now it's up to you, our listeners, to decide.
Head to theaters on March 14th. Check it out and see if it was worth adding to your watch list. We want to know what you think.
This has been Binge Guide, The Next Show, your guide to the world of film and TV. Until next time, happy binging.